Every outlawed execution technique throughout history, starting with animals. Throughout history, humans have used animals to do their bidding in executions. Things like crushing by an elephant, to even biting by animals like the cliche saying being thrown to the lions, which was normally used in the Roman times, as well as other animals like crocodiles and sharks to do their bidding. In medieval Europe and imperial China, quartering by horses or even camels in the Middle East, which was a very popularized way of execution. Also trampling by horses. Then there was even a technique used in the Roman Empire where the victim was stuffed in a sack with a number of different animals and was thrown into a body of water to die. Suffocation and ash. Suffocation in ash was most dangerous because of carbon monoxide poisoning by burning coal in a sealed room. However, suffocation in general has been very popular throughout history with things like strangulation and things like short drops where the person actually just chokes to death. Backbreaking. Backbreaking is a Mongolian method of execution that avoided the spilling of blood on the ground, and hence the name. They would just break the back and leave them to die. Many seem that this would be an instant death, but most of the time it takes a little while for the person to die after. Blowing. Blowing is when somebody gets tied to the mouth of a cannon, which is then fired to their death. Blood eagle. Blood eagle, which is possibly the most horrendous of these deaths, which was used primarily by the Vikings historically, involved the cutting of the skin of the victim by the spine, then breaking the ribs so they resembled blood-stained wings, and then pulling the lungs out through the wounds of the victim's back. Yeah, that's crazy. Boiling to death. Carried out usually in a large cauldron filled with water, oil, tar, tallow, or even molten lead. Breaking wheel. This one, they literally just tied people down and smashed them with a wheel. Like, what the heck? Like, you could just use any other object to beat them. But why a wheel? Well, I think it's because wheels were like the only thing like big enough that was like around them in the town square, so that's just what they started doing. Burning. Burning throughout history has been used in various ways, but I think the most common was burning at the stake, which was infamous as a method of execution for witches. A slower method of applying single pieces of burning wood was used by Native Americans to torture their captives to death. Molten metal. This execution method was usually associated with people who made counterfeit coins or products. These people got poured molten level down their neck, or traders that got this molten metal poured on their head. Also, the infamous brazen bull, where the victim was put inside an iron bull statue and then cooked alive after a fire was lit under it. Crushing. Crushing is pretty obvious. It was a weight that abruptly falls on somebody. Bloop. Disembowelment, which was often employed as a supplementary part of execution with like drying and hanging, drying, and quartering. Dismemberment. Also, this one's pretty self-explanatory. It was used specifically for people for punishment and high treason at certain times in history. Drowning. Execution by drowning was one of the earliest written about ways of execution throughout history and was used by a wide variety of cultures, and it was a method of execution for many different offenses like capital theft, treason, and witchcraft. Drawing and quartering. Drawing and quartering is the English method of execution for high treason. The convicted traitor was fastened to a hurdle or a wooden panel and was drawn by a horse to the place of execution, where he was then hanged, emasculated, disemboweled, beheaded, and quartered. His remains would often be displayed in prominent places throughout the country, such as the London Bridge, to serve as a warning of the fate of traitors. For the reasons of public decency, women convicted of high treason in Britain were burned at the stake. Falling. Falling is where the victim is thrown off of a height or into a hollow. For example, the Barathlon in Athens. Also in Argentina during the Dirty War, those that were secretly abducted were later dragged off and thrown from an airplane into the ocean. Flaying. Flaying is the removal of the entire skin. Yeah. Ouch. Impalement. Impalement is the penetration of the body by an object, such as a stake, pole, or a spear, or a hook. Not anything else. It was often used to the gut to ensure a thorough bleed out that would take a while. Poisoning. Poisoning was a very common way of execution for royals and nobles, and depending on the time period, drinking an infusion of something like hemlock was used as a method of execution. And specifically this relates to ancient Greece, and specifically drinking an infusion of hemlock is the way that Socrates the philosopher died. Sawing. Sawing was the practice of sawing or cutting someone in half, either at the waist or up and down in either direction. Scaphism. Scaphism was an ancient Persian method of execution in which the condemned was placed in between two boats, force-fed a mixture of milk and honey, and left them floating in water. The victim would then suffer from severe diarrhea from the milk or honey, which would attract things like insects that would end up burrowing and nesting inside the victim, eventually causing death from a variety of different things. Death by 1,000 cuts. The methodical removal of portions of the body over an extended period of time, usually with a knife or a sword, eventually resulting in death. And lastly, starvation. Starvation is most notably seen in crucifixion, in which is a roping and nailing a person to a wooden cross or a similar thing like a tree and leaving them to perish. The crucifixion of Jesus in the Bible is the most notable instance of this method. Gibbeting. Gibbeting is when the victim is placed in a cage, hanging from a gallows type structure in a public location, and then left to die to deter other existing or potential criminals. Impalement. The confinement of a victim by walling them in. This was also used as a form of imprisonment for life, in which in many cases the victim would usually be fed. But that would still suck. Hello, this is Box at the end of your video. I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, and watch the next video.